What will Seattle hold as SMX returns west, bringing 250 riders with it and an ultra-close points battle between Chase Sexton and Cooper Webb? We've got your preview.
Oh, it's on now. Welcome to SMX Insider. We are the Jasons, Weigandt and Thomas. Doesn't get much better than this. JT, 7 races to go at Monster Energy AMA Supercross and only 8 points between Cooper Webb and Chase Sexton, and headed to Seattle, where they probably had their best ever one-on-one duel at that race last year. This is a bench racer du jour right now.
It is, and we spent so much time thinking and talking about what would the series look like after that weekend off, because it can go one of two ways, and it really felt like Chase Sexton took it to the positive side of momentum. He was able to reset, kind of think about the things that had gone wrong throughout those pivotal last 5 rounds leading into the break, and he looked like a different guy. He executed the way he would want to. He effectively cut that points lead in half, down to 8, and the series feels differently than it did just 1 round prior leaving Indianapolis.
Yeah, and Chase said for some reason, even when he was a kid, he'd had this tendency to either start races well, then have a mid-season or mid-race or mid-weekend lull, and then come on strong later, and he's absolutely done that. We had the stats on our last show to show he's done that as a pro. But you and I had a podcast on Sunday. You made an interesting point about Cooper Webb. If that's actually the worst it gets for Cooper Webb, that's not as bad as it actually maybe seems, even though he lost half of his lead.
Yeah, and I think it was a little bit of a misleading weekend for Coop, because the first race, race 1 of the weekend, really determined the outcome, because he got better and better and better, and he made an uncharacteristic mistake, went down, that forced him into a 7th place position, and in the end, he was 4th place in the results column, which cost him those 7 points. But if you look at the riding, you look at the improvement throughout the night, and him winning race 3, maybe it wasn't as difficult of a weekend as it maybe appeared in the results column. So I think his mood was better on the podium than I expected, because he understood big picture that the riding was still intact. Yes, you cannot give away points like that, but everything else was maybe a misnomer of how the night actually went.
So what this means is you've got both contenders feeling good, healthy, fresh, ready, confident, headed to Seattle. We'll preview all that. Also the return of 250 West. We'll give you a quick recap of where the 250 East division sits. They're 1 week away from a huge run to the Northeast, plus our normal medical update, statistics, and a lot more on this episode. And here are the big topics that we're talking about this week, including a race that took place while Birmingham SMX was underway. That's the FIM Oceania Cup. This is a race for women that took place in Australia, and the home team won. Sounds kind of like Motocross of Nations with Team Australia winning in 2024. But shout out to key players here. Team USA finishes 2nd. Great by them. And can I call her Charlie XCX? She's like the big popular thing on the scene here. Charlie Cannon of Australia, that's who led that team to victory. So a lot to unpack. Great job by the American women, and great job by Australia as well.
Yeah, that's 2 years in a row the Australians have brought this race home. And Charlie had a big come-from-behind ride there to seal the deal. Congratulations to the Australians. USA comes up a tiny bit short, but they did have a great outing down in Australia.
Yeah, Lala Turner, one of the ones that rode very well for Team USA, along with Jordan Jarvis. And this bridges us toward the WMX women's racing in America coming up this year. So WMX had a bit of a quiet return to the pro scene in 2024. Racing will be at a much higher level in 25. You look at the schedule here. They're going to race on Friday afternoon at the first 3 Pro Motocross rounds of the year and the final 3 Pro Motocross rounds. And that will be their championship calendar. Last year, they raced at a lot of the big amateur races and a few Pro Motocross rounds. Now it's all Fridays at Pro Motocross. That's cool, I think, for WMX, yes, obviously, but also I think cool for the fans going to these races to have some pro gate drops on Friday.
Yeah, I want to see who comes over. Are we going to see Charlie Cannon maybe make an appearance? Are we going to see lots of Van Drunen make an appearance from coming over from Europe? I think this opens the door to be on the stage of the Pro Motocross weekend that is going to draw these racers in. So it's a welcome return. We used to have so much intrigue around these type of races, and I think we're headed back that direction.
Yeah, that's cool. Definitely big times for women's sports all around, and that includes everything in SMX. Let's go to another race that was taking place, this one at Birmingham, but again, maybe didn't have quite as much spotlight on it as Chase Sexton winning the 450 class. we had a rider from Tahiti compete in the KTM Junior Supercross Challenge. I thought that was wild, but here's JT saying, yep, I know all about that. I did it myself.
Yeah, so right after I finished my professional career, I went down to race in Tahiti and raced on, I'm sure, on the tracks that this young ripper was on down there as well. So this was close to my heart. I know some of the people involved with his program. And yeah, it just goes to show that SMX is a worldwide program. And imagine the experience for this kid at 8 years old to travel to the USA and race in Birmingham. That's something he'll never forget. So yeah, smiles all around.
If I can get this right, that is Amona Besert, who raced there from Tahiti on that number 3. So that was definitely cool to see. Look, we have said this starting with last weekend, and we're going to do it every weekend for the rest of the Monster Energy Supercross calendar. All open stadiums and all cities for the most part where we have seen inclement weather before. Birmingham was great this year. You were in a great mood all weekend due to the sunshine. But we go to Seattle. You can't talk about Seattle without rain and not having a roof. So just talk about how this could affect the track.
Well, it's always, I think front of mind. When you think about Seattle, you think about, okay, what is the racetrack going to look like? And this weekend will be no different. Now, we may get lucky and not have rain throughout the evening. And I know that's your calling card. We just need a window without rain to salvage this thing. But I think how it affects the track, because it is going to rain throughout the week. It's going to rain all the way up through Friday, and that's going to make it softer. The jumps are going to be more difficult, ruddy conditions. Think about last year, how capable and potent Levi Kitchen was in those conditions. That's going to be the type of racetrack we see no matter what. So let's hope we get some sunshine or at least average conditions on Saturday, so we're not dealing with a full mutter. But it's not going to be a Birmingham. It's not going to be one of these racetracks where guys can put triples and quads together. You're going to have to think about the racetrack in a little bit different way. What is the most efficient way? Something I can do lap after lap, because it's a 21-minute race. Putting in one good lap and then 3 bad ones is not the secret to success for a race like Seattle.
Now, look, I would love to do a victory lap because I'm about to show you the weather report. And I'm about to be proven right again that we only need a small window. As far as the weather itself is concerned, this is what I'm always talking about. So, expected to have weather on Thursday, rain, Friday, rain, and then Saturday, nice and sunny. I always say that's all the SMX track crew needs is a window. That moment they pull the tarps off, which when there's bad weather is normally about 4 o'clock. They really only need about 4 p.m. to 10 local time. But if the track is already going to be changed before that, I can't take the victory lap, JT.
I'm going to go on the record right now. This is going to come out Thursday afternoon. It's not going to be a picture-perfect sunny day like that beautiful graphic showed us. There's no way that's happening. I just want to put it out there on the front end. We'll reconvene here a week from Thursday and talk about my prediction, but that's where I'm going. It's Seattle. Come on, people. There's no way we're going to have blue skies in Seattle on Saturday.
Look, I can't wait. I've got the power. I'm in the booth this weekend. I'm just going to start the show no matter what and say it's picture perfect blue skies and sunshine in Seattle. Fake news or not, that's what I'm going to go with just to win the argument. You can shake your head. It doesn't matter what we think. Let's talk to the contenders. Cooper Webb knows there's all open stadiums from here on out. Here's what he thinks.
It's not a worry, but it's definitely something that we're not naive to, right? We're going to 8 open stadiums and 4 or so in the Northeast, and then next weekend in Seattle where it's likely to be wet. But I like my chances in the wet, rainy, ruddy stuff. I've always done well, and it's the same for everybody, right? So with that being said, we'll just kind of stick to course, and if it rains, it rains, and if it doesn't, great.
You know what, JT? That interview just continues a long tradition of every racer ever always saying, if it's muddy, that's going to favor me. I'm going to be good. They always take the positive.
Yeah, and I think for Webb, if it's a full-blown mutter, you think about like 2006 Seattle, I don't think it favors him. I think it's actually the opposite. But if it's like last year, remember how great he was. A slow, methodical racetrack where you have to think about where you're going and make smart decisions. I do think, to Cooper Webb's point, that works for him. So it's a fine line between that type of racetrack and then full-on mud. But even if it's not the sunny forecast that we got, if it's just average conditions on Saturday, it will be more of what Cooper Webb's looking for in a racetrack.
It'll be hard to figure out what you're looking for if you're going to NXT bets and trying to figure out who you think is going to win the race, especially with the weather that, no matter what the announcers say on TV, could be tricky. So let's bring in the experts to try to figure out what direction to go this weekend.
James Stewart, let's talk betting. We're headed to Seattle. I'm sitting here right now. It's beautifully sunny, but we likely got some weather coming in. Let's talk podium and who's going to be on the podium outside of the guys we expect to be on the podium, right? Webb, Sexton, and Roxon, they've been on the podium 6+ times this year. We know they're likely to be there, but there's some interesting bets after that. Aaron Plessinger, Justin Cooper, Malcolm Stewart, Jason Anderson, all give or take have an odds around 200 to 300, which is going to pay out $50 on a $20 bet. And then you got Justin Hill with a 953. He's a local Oregon guy, a little bit farther away. But who do you think could be on the podium this weekend, James?
Well, if you're asking me, I think they're all pretty even. And, maybe the two long shots, I would say that the least likely would be Jason Anderson, but dude, he had some bad luck last week, and it seemed like he was just getting knocked down by everybody. And then Justin Hill, I feel like Aaron Plessinger, Justin Cooper, and Malcolm, they're pretty even. So I would base it off of past history, the way this track's going to be. We know Aaron likes the ruts. The whoop's probably a breakdown, so that helps Justin Cooper, but I'm probably going to lean towards Aaron Plessinger on this one if I was going to say somebody's going to get on that just because of history.
All righty, James. Well, Aaron Plessinger is a great pick from a podium perspective. He did win here in 2018. Now, it was on a 250, but it was a mud race, and so clearly he enjoys it. Let's talk about head-to-head. If folks have been paying attention, you're 3 weeks in a row picking the right one. This week, here we are. We got Aaron Plessinger. He's a -122. Malcolm Stewart, he's a -109. So odds are pretty close. But who are you going with, James?
Well, just like my last answer, if you ask me who I feel like is going to get on the podium, I lean towards Aaron Plessinger. So Aaron's getting on the podium. You got to feel like Cooper Webb and Chase Sexton is probably going to be up there as well. So I'm going with Cowboy. Like you mentioned, he has the history here. And, last weekend, I think him and Malcolm was pretty close. Malcolm's bike just seemed like it worked a little bit better on a hard pack track. But we know Aaron loves these ruts, and when it gets muddy and all that, especially if it has the rain, them long legs. Malcolm's a tall person as well. Them long legs going to work well for the Cowboy. I'm going Aaron Plessinger.
Well, hopefully your brother's not listening, because you might have to pay the piper there, bud. All righty, guys. Know that the lines that we've just quoted here, they may shift during the week, so go make sure you check out your local sports book. And James, let's enjoy this race in Seattle this weekend.
All right, well done, gentlemen. It is going to be awfully tough to predict these races going forward. Not just Seattle, but about to run a gauntlet for 250 East. They get this one weekend off, and then that big northeastern swing, Foxborough, New Jersey, just outside of New York, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. Again, open stadiums, and a wide open class that is still not delivered a repeat winner. 5 for 5 on new winners, with Nate Thrasher jumping on board at Birmingham.
Yeah, this is going to be a great run. You think about these venues, the setup we have, the points in both classes. Chase Sexton's brought it back to the forefront. The 250 East is tighter. Like Vial has that 10-point lead, but it doesn't feel like he's really running away with anything. He hasn't been dominant in any way. I think you have to come to these races and watch this. We do a fantastic job bringing you the races on Peacock and NBC, but to be there in person, it's just a different experience. And I think this is going to be a season that you're going to want to see in person.
Last year, Seth Hamaker showed up in Philadelphia, and the fans were rabid for him. And that was Seth Hamaker then. There's a chance we're going to Philadelphia this year with him maybe being the fastest guy in the class. Maybe by then he's got more wins. He's right there battling for the title right now. That could be epic. We get to Philadelphia in a couple weeks, and Hamaker's in the run for this title, which it looks like he is going to be with the way he's riding. I just want to give a shout out to him. The improvement in Seth Hamaker, he's always been fast, JT. But to back it up consistently right now, this is a big step.
It is, and I think everybody not named Jalik Swoll would be excited for another Philadelphia performance. But he feels like he's in this championship hunt, and the riding certainly has been. I've mentioned a few times, the food poisoning in Detroit has been the equalizer. Otherwise, he would be the headline. Maybe he doesn't have the red plate, but he certainly would be a very specific factor in this.
It's going to be madness at those races. And you never know when the action is going to happen. Courage is our next topic, and that is Malcolm Stewart, innocent bystander to Justin Hill. who's normally great with busting out crazy rhythms at odd times. Well, it didn't work in practice at Birmingham. He crashed, and then he takes out Malcolm, and then Malcolm ends up having his second best race of the year after this.
Yeah, I mean, Malcolm, he fought through, we really don't know exactly what the injury was. It probably would just be the lower leg injury, but you could see how bad he was limping. And the biggest key here is adrenaline. That is such an underrated part of racing for all of these riders. You can think about Nate Thrasher, who was the Birmingham 250 East winner, with his finger, him being able to ride through the first few rounds while he had just had surgery on that finger. I think Malcolm Stewart was in that same camp where he's just like, you know what, when I put my helmet on, it's mind over matter. I'm not going to think about how much pain I'm in. I have a job to do. And he certainly did that. That was a vintage Malcolm Stewart performance. He was jumping sections consistently that other riders weren't. And, with better starts, who knows what he could have been capable of on Saturday.
Well, I'm certainly smiling when I see Malcolm Stewart ride that well, because now two of my central tenants, JT, have both made it into this episode. If you have sunshine on Saturday, you cannot have a mud race on Saturday. Let's hope that one comes true. And the other thing, I hate this, when there's an assumption that when there's a two-rider title fight, if rider A wins, rider B will finish second. Malcolm Stewart and Aaron Plessinger got in between. They took points away from Cooper Webb. So I got both of them in. I'll let you counterpoint that and expand later. But we got to get to SMX Medical Update with Dr. Joe. Time for the SMX Medical Update. Here's one that we didn't want to have to give. Ken Roczen is still racing, but apparently not quite at 100%. He indicated that it's a separated shoulder. We've tackled this one before, the difference between separation and dislocation. What do you think is happening there to some degree in Ken Roczen's camp, Dr. Joe?
Yeah, this is a highly relevant conversation, right? We've had a few shoulder dislocations. Now we're talking separation. And again, just to clarify the difference, there's three bones that make up the shoulder. It's a very complex structure. You have your humerus, which is your arm bone. You have your collarbone, which is your clavicle. And then you have your scapula, which is the flat bone on your upper back. So those are the three bones that make up the complex structure of the shoulder. When you have a separation, that's involving essentially the collarbone or clavicle and how it attaches to the scapula at your AC joint. So there's two main ligaments that hold that together. You can have up to 6 different types of separations of the shoulder. Given the fact that Ken's out there racing still, it's likely a type 1 or type 2 injury. That's typically the AC ligament, so that's the ligament at your AC joint. That's most likely what's injured in that case. If it's more significant, then there's a second ligament. It's called the corticoclavicular ligament. That's what actually holds the clavicle down to the scapula. That can be injured as well. So again, given the fact that he's racing, this is a separation. It's involving the ligaments essentially along the clavicle, and it's likely on the easier side of things, a type 1 or type 2.
Well, we need to work in a Kevin Bacon reference with 6 degrees of separation here. But I have also suffered this injury, and I had a grade 3. So I just want your opinion, and maybe I don't know if Kenny disclosed what grade his was, but my understanding, I had a 3. Anything 3 or 4 or higher, you probably need to repair that surgically. Anything lower than that, therapy is probably your best option. So we're speculating a little bit, which is always dangerous, but for him to recover, I think he raced basically a week after, and to be able to perform at that level, do you think we're talking about a lower level separation here?
I agree, just based on the fact that he raced. And you're absolutely right. Once you get up grade 3, grade 4, that's where the ligaments are completely torn, and then that clavicle becomes unstable. Given how good he raced this past weekend and he's able to get out there and ride, I suspect it's a grade 1 or grade 2, which is a partial ligament injury. It still doesn't feel great. It's still not stable, but those ligaments aren't completely torn in that situation.
And then how does it progress from there if he's skipping surgery, which appears he is? Can he get better, or is this something you're just stuck with for a while?
Yeah, again, if he wasn't out there competing at the highest level, competing for a title, you would take some time off no matter what and allow this to heal. So rest, icing. At grade 1, grade 2, it'll heal on its own typically. For our clinic, we typically use platelet-rich plasma or PRP. It accelerates the healing nicely. Pretty much anyone that comes in with an AC injury or shoulder separation would get platelet-rich plasma. That helps with the process. But yeah, it's just going to take time for that to heal. And hopefully it'll, won't be an issue here in a few weeks.
Hey, Dr. Joe, one other rider we want to talk about is Jordan Smith. I know you know him, and you talked about him a few weeks ago, and the prospects of maybe racing Seattle. What do you think is happening there?
Yeah, we're hopeful. Jordan's going to be racing this weekend. Again, his major issue was that spleen injury. He injured the spleen in that crash a few weeks ago. For a spleen injury, it just takes time. There's no magic to accelerate that one. It just takes time. He's been back on the bike. He's been doing his cardio training. He still has those rib fractures that don't feel great, but you can ride with healing rib fractures. The major issue is going to be the spleen. So his spleen's going to get reevaluated again. He's right about at that 5 to 6 week mark after the injury. Assuming everything looks good, we expect to see him back out on the track this weekend. The main question is going to be, race pace, right? Being off the bike, not out there practicing hard for several weeks. No matter, how good you feel or how much cardio you're doing, it's not the same thing as race pace. So Jordan's anxious to get back out there. Obviously, he's been competitive all year and in great shape. We'll just look to see how fatigue, if that'll set in at all, and how he does out there riding.
All right, always good to get the SMX Medical update from Dr. Joe McGinley. Good luck. I know you got a lot planned for your summer. We'll talk about that in a future episode, but thanks for the info for now.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, before we move on to more analysis of the 450 class, let's not forget that 250 West resumes for one weekend in Seattle. It has been a wild dot on the schedule their season. Haiden Deegan is the red plate holder. He somehow had a wilder weekend not racing when everyone was in Birmingham than everyone that actually was racing in Birmingham. Typical Deegan fashion, though. He's leaned in on that. I guess here's what really matters. He has the 12-point lead over Julien Beaumer. Do you think the off-track stuff is going to have any effect on Deegan? And whether it does or doesn't, what do we get from Beaumer, Davies, Shimoda, the guys that are left battling him for this championship?
Well, to your first point, I don't think it will. He's so defiant, and he's leaning into this stuff. So I don't think any noise or anything that's happened in the off week will affect him. I think if anything, it just boisters his personality even more. But I am curious to see whether Joe Shimoda, Juju Beaumer, who are both dealing with injuries that had happened in prior rounds, but they've had time to heal. Hopefully, Juju Beaumer has gotten back onto the practice track. I want to see what they have, because it really felt like Haiden Deegan was kind of taking over. He extended the points lead. He looked like the best guy, even with a third at the showdown. He looked like the best 250 West racer. So I want to see if we see continuation of that. Did Haiden Deegan steal the momentum away, and now he's just going to extend it? And let's not forget about Cole Davies on a track that will require precision the way that Seattle will. That is a calling card for Cole Davies. So let's see if he can be a factor in this down the stretch as well.
Okay, so we said we would resume the talk of the 450 standings. Again, it's 8 points between Cooper Webb and Chase Sexton with 7 to go. And as I keep pounding home, other riders can still get in there. It didn't take a disastrous weekend for Webb for him to finish 4th and lose half of that point lead. So I think we're in for more of this. We talked about it last week with the open stadiums coming up. It's not quite tied, but it's anyone's between these two with 7 races to go, I feel.
It is, and these two are very close. And it's very fitting that we're going to a racetrack in Seattle where they had one of the closest, it may have been the closest finish ever, but it was right there. They battled to the end. Jet Lawrence made that pivotal mistake, but those two really put on a show, and they're both going to be thinking about that going in. Now, to your earlier point, yes, AP and Malcolm got in there, but it could go the other way too. Think about Justin Cooper. He is certainly capable of playing a role here. And oh yeah, there's that number 3, the Eli Tomac that's looming also. Now, can he get back? Does he race the last couple of rounds? Is he able to beat the likes of Chase Sexton? Not maybe at 100% yet. Would he want to play a role in any sort of team tactics? Anyway, just something to watch. Let's see if those other positions, I know it's a big point for you, but it certainly could play a role here in 2025.
Time for SMX Facts. JT and I have already bench raced a few times about how great the Sexton v. Webb duel in Seattle was last year, but now we have Seattle's own statistician Clinton Fowler to give us data about how good that race was.
Yeah, incredible race last year. Everybody seemed to make mistakes, which is what that Seattle track does when it gets rutted up here in the joyous weather of the Pacific Northwest. But it was a Cooper Webb standard practice race. He won. It was the 9th closest race in the history of Supercross in recorded history. He won by just a half a second over Chase Sexton, which is yet again our 2 title competitors, JT. What is it about a track like Seattle and a guy like Cooper Webb, where we should have known something like that was going to happen.
I just think it works for what he does well, and that is he minimizes mistakes, unforced errors. Let's remove the immediate thought of race 1 last weekend, but that's not really in his MO. So when a track is forcing you to make errors everywhere and you're able to minimize those, it's going to be a feather in your cap, and that's great for Cooper Webb. And the way he went about it last year, I think there's something to that also. He didn't get a great start. He got to the front very quickly and made moves when he's able to. So, we talk about how his racecraft really helps him in these championship fights. I think Seattle is the prototypical race where that kind of comes to life.
So we've been teasing on this show how close these points are. Anything can happen. And I believe with 7 races and 8 points, anything can. But it's kind of alarming to look at your stats to say Chase Sexton getting the point lead back would actually be pretty historically rare.
Yeah, that is the case. There's only been 6 times in the history of sport where after round 10, the lead has changed, or ultimately the champion has changed. But here's the thing. It just happened in 2023, and it was Chase Sexton that it happened with, and Cooper Webb was part of that battle. So after round 10 in 2023, Chase Sexton sat third in the point standings. Cooper Webb was down. He was down 14 to Cooper Webb, 17 to Eli Tomac. That ended up playing to his favor. Now, injuries played a factor there. But guys, I think anything can happen. JT, it's like that year there was injuries. It could be that we go out to Seattle and it's more of a mud race here this weekend, or it's a rutted track in 7 points is really just the difference between first and fifth place.
Well, you don't know what's going to happen. You mentioned the injuries in 2023. Cooper Webb exits the series in Nashville with the head injury. We know Eli Tomac's Achilles injury in Denver a week later. That certainly was the determining factor in that championship. And you could even say last year, Cooper Webb and Jet Lawrence looked like they were in an epic fight to the end, and then Cooper Webb suffers this thumb injury. So it played a role last year as well. We don't know what's going to happen. The same thing could happen this year to any of the protagonists. That's what makes this series so difficult to win, is you not only have to be the best racer, you also have to avoid injury and avoid incident over the course of months and months and months if you want to come out on top.
And Sexton just proved your stats from last week, can I say correct? He has that midseason slump, and now we're into the latter portion, and look at that. He's got another win, Clinton. So it's kind of what we've already talked about. He is a closer.
Yeah, I mean, hey, he's won 5 of his now 12 victories in the last 5 rounds of the season, so he's coming on just when we would expect him to. And guys, it could be a wonderful race here. I'm looking out the window, and the weather's looking pretty nice today, so let's keep our fingers crossed.
I'm going to take that. On Saturday, it's going to be sunny. Just listen to the show, everybody. I'm going to say it no matter what. Clinton, we'll see you in your home race. I mean, look, you're a Southwick guy deep down inside, but we'll see you where you live now this weekend.
I am. This is the home away from home. Looking forward to seeing you guys this weekend.
All right, we are fired up. This is going to be a great race in Seattle. If last year was any indication, if you want to watch it, Race Day Live starts at 2:30 Eastern Time on Saturday. That's qualifying coverage. And the gate drops at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. 8 o'clock Eastern. That's 5 o'clock out there in Seattle. JT, man, so many storylines going right now.
Yeah, what more do you want? You have championship fights everywhere you turn. And Chase Sexton completely changed the narrative on where we thought this series was headed down the stretch. So buckle up. I think we're just getting started. As crazy as that sounds, we're going into round 11. I feel like we're just getting started here.
Yep. And when you see the pressure or the challenge come Cooper Webb's way, he has a tendency to react. So that'll be fun to watch as well. It's going to be great. We'll see everyone in Seattle. Thanks for watching SMX Insider.